welcome to Lovecast the BL podcast reviews. For this little bonus review, we're checking back in with our favorite boys, Nick and Charlie, and friends for a review of Heartstopper Season 3. And with me today, I have my fellow hosts, Kayla and Heather.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello,
Keen.
hello. Alrighty, so Heartstopper Season 3, we're up to the third season. There's a lot to get into with this one, but before we jump into it, we're just going to do like our quick little synopsis like we always do. So Heartstopper is growing up. 3 seasons in, the cute, wholesome world of this hugely popular queer coming-of-age story still exists, but Nick and Charlie aren't those same kids anymore. Charlie would like to tell Nick that he loves him, and Nick also has something important to say to Charlie. As the summer holiday ends and the months race on, the friends begin to realize that the school year will come with both its joys and its challenges. As they learn more about each other and their relationships, plan social events and parties, and even start thinking about university choices, everyone must learn to lean on those they love when life doesn't go to plan. So this season of Heartstopper, like the others, is 8 episodes, about 30 to 40 minutes each episode. And of course, it is available to watch on Netflix. So I feel like we need to maybe just put it out there with the content of season 3 that there will likely be discussions of eating disorders, self-harm, general mental health, transphobia. There was a lot of intense topics in the season of Heartstopper, which, as said, is a little bit of a departure from the previous seasons, or hasn't quite been as intense in the previous season. So just, if that's those kinds of things are stuff that are difficult for you to discuss or listen to discussions about, I just felt like we should put a little disclaimer out there that we'll probably be getting into all of those things during this review. So feel free to skip if that's not something you enjoy listening to or hearing about. So, yeah. But otherwise, season 3, man, there was a lot that went down this season.
Oh my God. I
Ugh.
feel like this season was the season that made me go on a proper roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
Like previous seasons, I was in the cute and fluffy, the butterflies in my tummy type of vibes and feelings, and season 3 really had me like, I think it was by the end of, it was like this, episode 3 or episode 4, I was sobbing, like
Yeah.
actually legitimately sobbing. um that was a very difficult, like, period in the series.
Mm-hmm.
It really got me. But yeah, it was definitely, and a lot of like the more serious topics did lend to the roller coaster um
Mm-hmm.
of emotions in this season. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. I feel like I feel like when they were kind of pulling this season together, they were like, we're going to get them. We're going to tug on their heartstrings even more. We're going to make someone cry.
Yeah, no, it was very intense, especially the first half, like the first 4 episodes. Like it felt like they really
Ooh.
Oh
front
no.
loaded it onto you. And obviously, like season 2 had kind of set up the inklings of diving into Charlie's eating disorder and his issues around
Yeah.
food. So we knew that was coming in. Obviously, people who have read the web comics probably knew the story a lot more in
Yeah.
depth than those who have just been watching the show, but it really did feel like at some points like such a tonal shift from what we'd
Yes.
watched in the first 2 seasons. And I don't necessarily mean that's a bad thing because, I think the show has kind of grown organically over the 3 seasons. And like, it was at a point where I think they were ready to kind of tackle those heavy topics. But,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of TikToks of, people who maybe are more casual watchers and go into Heartstopper for like the light and fluffy vibes that just got whacked over the head with the
Mm.
first 4 episodes of this
Yeah.
season, like destroying them. It's like it was a
Mm-hmm.
very, very many emotional moments, but yeah, it was a lot to tackle in this
Yeah.
season. So
And I feel like even if you did know what was coming up, because like I read, I read the web comics when they were all available and all of that. So I knew what was coming up, or I had like obviously parts of the story have changed a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, going from comic to screen, but a lot of the eating disorder uh, talk and showing it on the show and everything, like I knew it was coming up. It didn't minimize how all of it affected me, like how
Mm-hmm.
seeing how
Yeah.
Charlie was dealing with how he was feeling in that moment, how Nick was feeling in that moment, how Charlie's family was feeling, how Tori was feeling. Like, whoo, it just really got me how they just showed how just this thing that was happening to Charlie was affecting everyone he loved as well, and who loved him, and it affected them because they loved him. Like that really hit deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I literally have all the volumes sitting on my desk right now. So
Yeah.
I knew it was coming, but my thing was I wasn't sure how true to the comic they were going to be in depicting it,
Mm.
because I feel like it ended up being pretty similar. With the self-harm thing, they never really show anything. It's
Yeah.
just like something that's alluded to, and it's the same way in the comic. And
Mm-hmm.
then the all the eating disorder stuff, it's like you see Charlie's behaviors, like things he would do, but I guess you don't see, like, really, it doesn't go really, really dark. Like, I've watched some shows where there are themes of, like, eating disorder, and it really, like, puts everything out
Yeah.
on the table. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess Heartstopper, since it's kind of targeted towards a younger audience, it wasn't intending to go full force with any of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I did think that they handled it pretty well in comparison to the comic. Like, it
Mm.
was it was really similar, like, seriously, like, storyboard to screen, which I thought
Yeah.
was really interesting to watch.
Yeah. And I think that really lends itself to the fact that Alice Osman, yes,
Oh, yeah, I
um,
Yeah.
think so.
is so involved with the series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that, the fact that they're so involved really helps make it like stay as true to the comics as it can be while being adapted for the screen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean their influence is still all over the show, and they're obviously, I think, an executive producer is
I
what
think
their
so.
role is on
I
the
think
show. So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much involved in the process at probably every level. So it's always been nice to see how I think I read the first couple of volumes, but I think I fell off of reading it like right as like this chunk of the story was picking up, so I haven't read that far. And the web
Mm-hmm.
comics, but like even the first two seasons, obviously time, like things get cut for time, and like some storylines have been changed and adjusted, but it's always been really really cool to see, just like compared to other adaptations that happen, how true to form Heartstopper has always been, because Alice is involved, I think, and has so much role in the show. um
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I think even with this season kind of like treading into more intense topics, like it still was able to keep like that Heartstopper feeling that people have come to
Yeah.
know and love, which I think is
yeah.
kind of like what Kayla was saying about it not going too hard on everything. Like things did wrap off on a note that's like realistic, and that obviously Charlie is not just magically healed. Like his eating disorder and
Yeah.
his OCD is something that he is going to live with for the rest of his life. And, they honed in on that fact and made that very much a point of his journey through this. But, I also think like they were able to round out the really heavy parts of him getting through that, and like come back out on the more like hopeful, I guess, traditional Heartstopper vibes that people are typically associating with the show. While still
Mm-hmm.
also like, acknowledging that this is a thing that Charlie and some of the other stuff that, like Elle kind of like, had some similar
Yeah.
heavier storylines this season. So like, they ended on a good note while also still acknowledging that everything wasn't fixed or perfect or rainbows and sunshines, which I think is, one of the big criticisms people have had over Heartstopper over the years, is that it's a little bit
Yeah.
too rainbows and sunshines for the queer experience or for the teenage experience. So
Mm,
I think this season kind of walked that line well and
okay. I was going to
keeping those.
ask if you thought potentially it swung the other way too much to balance it out. Like, is that something that you maybe did it cross your mind at all? It crossed mine. Like, so
I
that's
think
why
it
I'm bringing
was
it up.
I think it was jarring because it,
Yeah.
it it felt like it went there very quick. But like when I
Yeah.
think about the season as a whole, I feel like it still came out pretty balanced in the end. I think like my thing is
Okay.
like it felt very heavy in the first half, and like in the second half, like it kind of delved into more like these kids are horny. Like that was like the second half of
Actually,
the
yes,
season pretty much.
that's true. This,
Um
yep.
so if
Yeah.
anything, I feel like, I don't know, maybe it could have been like interwoven a little bit more,
Yeah.
like kind of weaving it throughout the entire season as opposed to just like heavy loading it in pretty
Mm,
much like the first four episodes, because maybe
yeah.
five, because episode five I think is the first episode after Charlie gets back from rehab and he's like having
Yeah.
Christmas and there's still some struggles there, but it was pretty heavily loaded into the first four episodes, and so I think that made it really
Mm,
jarring coming off of the previous seasons. But I still think like when I
yeah.
look at it as a whole season, like it still feels balanced, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
See, like, I felt like it could have been the jarring nature that made me feel
Mm-hmm.
like this. That when I started it, at first, like, I knew that. Okay, so I do think that if you are going to cover topics like eating disorders, OCD, self harm, depression, all of that, you need to do it with respect and you need to do it seriously. I do
Mm-hmm.
think that. And I strongly believe that. And I do believe that Heartstopper did that. I just was feeling in those first few episodes that when I was watching, I did have like a moment of thinking, "Ooh, did they maybe swing the other way a little too hard too
Mm-hmm.
quickly?" Um, Even a little bit. I kind of thought that a tiny bit in the last four episodes where literally everyone is horny. I was like, did they swing a little too far again? But in the scheme of, like, sorry, in the setting of the show, if you think about their age and you think about the
Mm-hmm.
way that I guess teenagers feel their emotions, and you do have that big, like, they swing from one emotion to the next, everything feels so big. When you bring mental illness into the picture, that whole chunk of the series needs to be serious, and the way that you're going to show it is, especially if you're focusing on these teenage characters as the way that you, like, they're the main characters, you're going to show it in the way that they're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
um like,
Mm.
I do think they did that well, but I don't know, there was just, and it could, like I said, it could, and you mentioned how jarring it was. It could have been
Mm-hmm.
that it felt so jarring to
Yeah.
just jump right in.
Yeah.
So I did have a bit of a moment of like wondering if they'd potentially swung too far to the,
Mm.
like, other side of the scale a little too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
I kind of feel like, well, I thought the balance was pretty good. The way I
okay.
looked at it was kind of that, like, last season there were a lot of seeds being planted. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
there was something building up by the end of that season. So for me, it only made sense that it was all gonna like come to a head at the beginning of this season. Um, and I mean, yeah, the structure of it is again very similar to the comic. Like the first half is
yeah.
dark and then the second half is sex.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I didn't feel like it was that jarring just because I feel like all of those storylines are happening simultaneously, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm,
who they're hyper focusing on in the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
like we start off
yeah.
hyper focusing on Charlie and what's going on with him, but at the same time that's happening, Elle and Tao are already having their like issue with
Yeah.
like if they want to take the next step in their relationship and stuff. So it didn't feel like abrupt to me, I guess, but I could see how just being like hit with, because it really was heavy, hit with all
Mm-hmm.
these
Yeah.
heavy themes right at the beginning is like, you're like, am I watching Heartstopper still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and props to Joe and Kit because like those
Yeah.
early
Ooh.
episodes were like they were really really knocking it out of the park with the emotions they were bringing. I mean, um Joe especially like tapping into, all of Charlie's range of emotions that he was feeling and kind of going from like this intense like anxiety to this like really depressive state to like, they showed more of like the flashes of like how things would make him angry and how he would get defensive. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was really knocking it out of the park with those. And I think with Kit, like that scene on the beach with his aunt Diane, who the actress's name is escaping me. She played Peggy in the Marvel universe, and I can't remember the actress's name now, which is gonna bother me, but that scene was just like, oh my god, like the acting, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
from the entire cast, but especially like Joe and Kit killing it with those really really heavy scenes was just like they are, I mean, for kids who are still like 20, 21, like they just
Mm-hmm.
really knocked it out of the park with what they brought to this season.
Yeah. The acting was phenomenal. I think everyone, I didn't feel like anyone was underacting. I didn't feel like anyone was dropping the ball.
Mhm.
Like it, yeah, it was really good. And
Mhm.
I want to give props to the actress who plays Tori because
Yes.
Mhm.
She was my favorite
I,
this season.
yeah,
Tori
same,
was wow, yeah.
same, 100%. She was my favorite. I like, I don't know, there was just something about the way that she played her that just there was just some minute moments where like little subtle things that she did that I was just like so drawn in and just
Her
connected so strongly with her.
her eyes, her like eye
Oh,
acting is really on point, and like the way she
yeah.
utilized I don't know, like timing, I guess, of her lines,
Mm,
or like the delivery of her lines. Like I think of that scene during the Christmas episode where Charlie was like, Nick's the only person who doesn't think of me as ill. And like the way she delivered that, like, I don't do that
yeah.
too line, just like,
Yeah.
oh, that sat with me so hard. And like a lot of people have pointed out like the eldest daughter trope that I don't know
Mm,
if it's a trope, but like she really
Yeah.
just like the eldest daughter syndrome. Like
yeah.
she plays into that character to a T and makes I think that makes
Mm-hmm.
her really, really resonate, especially this season, kind of watching and feeling hopeless and like, just trying to put all your love on someone else to protect them while like not really
Yeah.
thinking about yourself. And like obviously Nick did that to an extent too, but I think it just hit different with Tori, like being his sister
Yeah.
and the role she
Yeah.
has in his life and things like that.
And then
Mhm.
also, um, so for me, when I was watching her like feel everything in this season, it kept making me think back to the fact that she had watched Charlie go through the bullying from before and how that
Mm,
affected him, and she'd
yeah.
already
Yeah.
said she felt so helpless in that moment, and it's just happening again, and she
Mm-hmm.
feels helpless again, and like I just kept remembering that part of it,
Yeah.
and I feel like the way that
Yeah.
like Tori or the actress was acting Tori in those moments, I could feel that she was going through it again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, and it just really hit. Like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
got me in the gut, like gut punch. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
saw,
good.
and I hadn't heard of this term before I saw it, but people were calling Tori a glass child. And I guess that's That's like when one sibling has like a chronic illness or something, so all the parents' attention goes to that sibling and the other one is like
Mm,
ignored.
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, oof.
Yeah.
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 Ooh. Yeah.
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 It's interesting because I think
Ouch.
um Tori is very much a character who like values her independence, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time
Yeah.
you think like how much of a choice did she have in being like that independent, which again goes back to the eldest daughter syndrome.
Mm.
Um and I think it's interesting to see like how they kind of set up if there is a fourth season, like her storyline and like her, she had
Yeah.
that conversation with Charlie on the Ferris wheel in the end. And I think if you're familiar with the Alice Oseman universe, Tori is also like canonically asexual in
Mm-hmm.
the novel universe. So um I think I saw like some people criticize that, like I think that scene in the Ferris wheel in the written universe is like where she tells Charlie that she believes she's asexual or is thinking about that
Mm.
way, thinking about
Mm.
herself in that way. But obviously they didn't. They kind of only like planted the seed a little bit of her like
Yeah.
kind of questioning like what does it mean to be someone's boyfriend or what does it mean to be someone's girlfriend, and like there was that very pointed moment
Yeah.
of Isaac looking
Yeah.
at her in the final episode, and that kind of like was also I think like an Easter egg there. But I'll be
Mm-hmm.
curious to see. I like that she was seemed like more of a central character this season. I think she was very very central to Charlie and his plot line. So I'll be curious to see, seeing her maybe get more of her own offshoot if there's a season four, and kind of having letting her have an arc to explore on her own
Yeah.
that's not necessarily tied to Charlie will be interesting to see. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd love to see that. I'd really
yeah.
love to see that. But yeah, speaking of Isaac, I have a little annoyance. I
Mm.
understand, but I had a little
Mm.
annoyance. I was really sad that he didn't get as much development in this season as he had had previously. It just felt
Mm.
like he was just kind of there. And to show that everyone is loved up and they're all doing their own things and he's just kind of existing. Um, but I also understand that there's only so many episodes. There was a lot to put into this season. He literally had his moment last season, quite nicely. He can't have even further of a moment while everyone else is dealing with their own things. Like, this cast is so big, and you do have your main, like, Nick and Charlie are the main characters. However, the ensemble have really become basically main characters, and you
Mm-hmm.
definitely see it in this season where everyone has their own like separate stories, really
Mm-hmm.
separate. And like there are scenes, like it was happening in last season too, but I just really noticed it in this season. There are scenes that are happening without Charlie or Nick at
Mm-hmm.
all,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
not even
Yeah.
mentioned. And it's specifically for that couple or that group of people, and their story.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why it happened the way it happened, but I was just really disappointed that Isaac
Yeah.
didn't get more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Isaac was
that's
really
one thing. Yeah.
interesting
Mm,
because like he almost played this not like a plot device, I don't think, because he did have that one moment in the aquarium where he was doing the metaphor about asexuality with the
yeah.
fish. But it's almost like because he was the only one that wasn't preoccupied with a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, he was the only one noticing that Charlie was going through anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
he kind
Mm-hmm.
of helped to, I guess, progress Charlie's
Mm,
story along a little. Um, I don't know if you would consider him a plot device in that sense, but it did feel like he was just there sometimes, which I agree. I did want to see a little bit more of him.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I did really like that moment where he was the one who went to check on Charlie and,
Yeah.
was kind of like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, are you okay? And like, I also kind of appreciated that, like, when we had that scene later where they were showing Tao's video. He was like, yeah, I'm kind of mad at you, like that
Yeah.
you lied and felt like you couldn't trust me or trust us. And I felt like I appreciate Isaac's emotions that they let him have, that like
Mm-hmm.
he's allowed to be mad about his friends ignoring him for their relationships. They kind of like let him have his emotional outbursts, which are very teenage things and also very
Yeah.
valid to what he's feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
He's a very like speak his mind character, which I appreciate because he kind of like almost breaks the bookish trope in that way of being like the one person in the friend group who's like, hey, let's talk about this. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Mm.
So like I
Mm-hmm.
do appreciate like the moments that he did have, and I think that whole his role in Charlie's progression was a pretty big point of his season. But yeah, I do agree, especially after that arc kind of finished, like he was just kind of like Isaac there with his book again, which we
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call it a regression, but I guess like they just didn't have much written in for him in the second half of the show. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I appreciated
Mm.
I guess it's kind of like in a similar vein how like Heather, you were saying like how all of these characters, or a lot of them now, like have stories that exist outside, or plot points that exist outside of Nick and Charlie. One that
Mm-hmm.
kind of like existed throughout the point of the season was um Darcy, and like
Yeah.
her or their gender identity,
Mm.
and kind of going on that journey.
Yeah.
And I was watching interviews with Kizzy, and how he was talking about how like that they kind of really, he and Alice really talked together to kind of morph that into his own journey
Mm.
as like realizing he was a trans man. I think Kizzy identified as non-binary when the series first started, or
Yeah.
is what they said. And then like as the years have gone on, like he's now using like he him pronouns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I was watching, it was like one of those little tidbits that Netflix put out, how like he said that Alice and the show creators have been like really respectful of their gender identity throughout the entirety of the show, and only wanted to introduce that with Darcy if he was comfortable with it. So like even though
Mm-hmm.
like their journeys as like Kizzy in real life and Darcy in real life ended up like they're ending up identifying at different places as of right now. Like Kizzy was talking about how like he really felt like it was nice that Darcy was able to mirror his own journey through their gender identity throughout the show. And even though it kind of
Yeah.
happened in the background, I know like I saw some criticism that people would have liked to see that be more of a forefront thing to identify or to center another like trans non-binary character in the show. But like I kind of like that it was just kind of like this natural, like you kind of pick up on Darcy realizing that they don't fuck with a lot of like gendered things and kind of like these
Yeah.
offhand comments, and you see Tara kind of picking up on them throughout the show and asking them how they feel about things, like how do you really feel about like being called a lady and stuff like that. So I almost
Yeah.
kind of appreciated that it kind of was like this natural progression, kind of, I wouldn't say they sidelined the story, but it kind of like worked with the passage of time that they were showing throughout the season, that yeah, we get a tidbit here of Darcy cutting their hair. We get a tidbit here of Darcy saying they're now using they, them pronouns and stuff like that. So I kind of like that it was just kind of like this part of Darcy that was developing just throughout the show, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily have this big, like, I'm non binary moment, but we kind of saw
Yeah.
these, like, little moments that kind of led to them being who they were by the end of the season.
Yeah. No, I agree. I actually did like that Darcy's gender journey was kind of just shown
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
through
Showing,
those
not
little
telling,
things,
kind of.
like
Mm-hmm.
a couple of comments
Exactly.
here, a haircut here, a conversation between partners there. Like, I really enjoyed that. I think that it felt like such a natural progression of their journey, and that you were
Mm-hmm.
just kind of checking in at different points throughout to see where it was going. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I did enjoy that.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I think one storyline that hit me in the face. Well, I don't know if this was a storyline, but the one moment that happened that made me feel very upset for her and like really angry for her at the same
Mm-hmm.
time was Elle's storyline, specifically with the
Oh
radio
yeah.
interview.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, and the transphobia that was happening during that, and her having a lot of that completely shoved in her face when it was not appropriate at
Mm-hmm.
all. It never is, ever. um and then the fallout of how she felt about herself after that, and like how it affected her art, how it affected her, how it affected her relationships. Like
Yeah.
it, yeah, that
Oh,
really,
I was so angry watching that interview scene. Like the
yes,
moment you realize that like,
Mm.
oh, they literally tricked her into
yes,
coming to this interview thinking she would be talking about her art from the perspective of creating art as a trans woman to basically
yeah,
forcing her. And like it taps into this idea of like forced advocacy, like when you exist as a
yes,
marginalized
Yeah.
identity, how like you don't really get a choice. And I think she was kind of like having that journey of like someone who
mm-hmm.
probably never really viewed herself as an advocate. Like she's just been existing as a trans woman. Like she
Existing,
incorporates it into her art and like what she creates, but like I don't think she really saw herself as like I'm an advocate and I'm going out to argue, and she shouldn't have to be
yeah,
because she's literally what 16, and like
yeah,
oh, watching her get forced, like the moment that she realized that like oh, this is why they brought me here, and like just the way her expression changed, I was like
oh my
I was so glad
god,
her mom was like
Ugh.
her parents were like yeah,
yeah,
you will be fucking hearing from us, because I was like otherwise
yeah,
you would be hearing from me through the
yes.
computer screen
Right.
I was
like
so upset. I was
Mm-hmm.
ready to like jump through that
oh my
television.
god.
It
Mm.
triggered the fuck out of me. I was like, I'm ready to fight for you. I'm ready to fight your battles, help you fight your battles. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just her identity being politicized, I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That, yeah, it's a lot. And then like, where was I going with that train of thought? Oh, it's almost like whenever like you know that there is prejudice. You know that there are people out there who I guess in this case are very anti-trans, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm.
isn't until you come face to face with it
Mm-hmm.
yourself that you really realize the gravity of it. You know,
Yeah.
like it kind of like bursts your bubble in a way where you're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh,
Yeah.
they're not allowing me to just exist as I am and like talk about my art. I have to like be faced with I don't know, all this turf turf rhetoric.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like you were saying before, Alexa, be an advocate in everything that you do. Like
Mm-hmm.
being forced to have opinions on things right then and there that you haven't even had the space to develop an argument for, or have the space to have any form of conversation. Like if you wanted to have a
Yeah.
conversation in that, you haven't developed that yet. You're literally being forced to sit there and defend you and your existence. That is horrible,
Yeah.
absolutely
So
horrible.
fucked. So fucked.
And yeah,
It was
I
really
thought that
tough
that
to
was,
watch.
yeah, it was very
Mm.
hard to watch.
And
um
I thought they introduced even throughout the season, like when they were talking about the sexual aspects of their relationship as well, like Tao being
yeah,
this being like a cis man in the relationship, and how
yeah,
Elle, obviously they touched on like elements of dysphoria when it came to the sex, but also like
mm-hmm.
Elle feeling like she didn't know how to talk to him about issues
Yeah,
around transness because he's a cis man, and there is always going to be an element that he doesn't understand, and that's just the way it
yeah,
is. And I think like it ended on an interesting note with like, maybe he doesn't quite get it in the way that she needs him to, but like
yeah,
he still like, I don't know, like the video was really cute that he made her, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, maybe I'm not gonna, I don't live your experience, so obviously I'm not gonna understand like what this did to you, how you're feeling about it, how you're processing it, but I can try. And I think for a lot of people, like, you know, as much as it might be difficult to have conversations with people who don't understand you or don't live your experience, like just having someone who's willing to listen and try to understand goes
Mhm.
so far. So I like that they like kind of address that aspect of like Tao being a cis man and how that impacts the way she can have conversations in their relationship and what she can talk to him about. So I like that they kind of, had that as part of that storyline as well, and what that how that reflects on their relationship and how they communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I really liked that. I actually really liked a lot of the conversations that were had between each of the couples around sex and
Mhm.
intimacy.
Mhm.
I really liked that Heartstopper brought in those elements and were showing all the different, I guess, or quite a few different feelings that people were having, and some being really ready to like, let's go, let's try some stuff out, let's see what we feel, how we feel, and then others being like, I'm really, really, really like nervous about this. I want to do
Mhm.
stuff with you. I want to be closer to you, but I'm really nervous about this.
Mhm.
Like, I really liked that there was the variety there, and that they showed a lot of the conversations like actually happening on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that they showed couples in different periods and like moving at different paces. Like obviously
Mm-hmm.
Tara and Darcy, we can infer that they're a couple that, they've been together for a while. The way that Tara was talking, they've seemingly been intimate for a while. So like there wasn't as much there, but they did show like some of that. They did have like I liked her conversation with Nick about like, timing and what you're feeling and how to find space for that, I guess, as a teenager who lives at home with their parents. And then like you have Elle and Tao who like once they got past that conversation, they were just like ready to go. They were like, we are ready to go. And then like I think with Nick and Charlie, it was more of like a gradual thing. Like you were saying, like, okay, we're gonna do some stuff here and then work up to by the end of the season, Charlie feeling more comfortable in an intimate situation, I think, and like just being ready for it more. So yeah, I mean it was a pretty good, like I would say it's a pretty, I don't know if cliche is the right word,
Mm,
um like work up to it, almost like that final scene of like them finally, it's very like
yeah.
rom-com, but I think the conversations that they were having leading up to it kind of set it apart and made it something that really tapped into something on a different level than just like your typical teenage rom-com would.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's
And then
interesting. I like that they were all of the cast was like very excited about like being able to say the word fuck now and like
yeah.
sex being introduced in the story. And like when you think about it, like, these 3 seasons have taken course over the place of a year in the show, but it's been
Mm-hmm.
3 years for the cast. So, they were teenagers like 17, 18, 19 when the show started, and now like they're in their early 20s. So I'm sure for them it feels like more of a natural progression, or like a progression into more like an adult side of their characters, which I'm sure has been fun for them to kind of play into, and not being um having more freedom, I guess, with like how they
Mm.
improvise in those scenes and being able to like throw out F-bombs and throw out middle fingers and kind of like play around more with the characters in that way. So I love that they
Yeah.
were all so excited about that.
Yeah.
So cute. It also, like, when the first fuck was said, it didn't feel completely out of place as well, which I thought was really interesting. At least I didn't
You've been
feel
like, they
feel
should
like
have
it
been
was
saying,
completely out of place.
especially when it comes to David, like that man should have
Oh,
had F
yeah.
bombs
Oh
thrown at him
Lord.
a long time ago.
Oh
Like,
my
Yeah.
god. I like, okay. I didn't feel sorry for him at all
oh,
in
when
this
the dad didn't
season
show up
when
for
Nope.
they had
Christmas,
the little
I don't give
thing
a
where he
fuck.
was like waiting for dad, and
Yeah, I don't
I did
care. I don't feel
not
bad
feel
for that
sorry for him.
man.
Literally, I was
No.
like, grow the fuck up. Learn that your
Yeah,
dad is shit.
literally.
Like, I had
No,
no
that man gets no
sympathy.
sympathy from me.
Mhm.
No, no. One thing I did miss, actually, that just reminded me, I missed Nick's mom.
Oh, Olivia Colman.
I
Yeah.
Oh. Oh
know.
yeah.
There were a
Yeah.
couple of moments, and I know
Huh.
that the aunt was there to um kind
She was
of
basically like the
fill that,
replacement. Yeah.
yeah.
But
And
she
I
was a
did
good
like it.
character, but yeah. It's like
Yeah.
Olivia Colman as Nick's mom was like such a staple of the show. I remember they had to announce like beforehand that she wouldn't be able to join for season 3. I think it was a filming schedule thing. And like people
Mm,
were very understandably like upset about that. But no,
yeah.
I think I'm really mad that I can't think of the actress's name who plays Diane, Aunt
Yeah, and
Diane, but
like we all know who she is. We've all seen her in
yeah.
stuff. She's a great
Hmm.
I
actor.
feel like her name's on the tip of my tongue and it's really bothering me that I can't. Haley something, I feel like. Haley Atwell. I think that's
Oh,
it. I think that might be it.
Oh.
that
But
sounds
yeah,
right.
she was really a great addition and like I'm glad that Nick still had that
Yeah.
maternal figure in the show because I think in the web comic that conversation on the beach happens with his mom, correct?
I'm pretty
Like the
sure it
conversation about
does.
Charlie's eating disorders
I
and
don't
stuff. It's
I
I
can't
I
don't
can't
remember.
remember.
remember, but
I feel
I
like a
think she
lot of
was.
conversations were had with his mum
Mhm.
that the aunt did replace.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But yeah.
yeah. She was it was sad to not have Olivia Colman though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't
Miss
know.
you.
I miss you. Maybe she'll be able to come back for season 4
Come
if
back
there
for
is
season
one.
4.
Yeah, I don't know. I was looking to see if like a fourth season had been confirmed, and I was seeing different um like different articles are saying different things, but
Mm,
I don't think it's confirmed as of right now from what I've
I
been
don't
seeing
think
like
so.
on the fan side of things. So I mean I feel like it's kind of a shoe-in to get at least one more season because like it's Heartstopper. And
Yeah.
I personally feel like one more season would probably be enough to kind of take the show to its end. I know the web
Yeah.
comic is releasing its final chapter saga. I don't know how they refer to it right now. Like they just started publishing like the final part
Mm,
portion of the Heartstopper web comic. So I feel like it would kind of line up really well with the end of the web comic to do one more season of the show. And I really don't think it would need to go any further than that. I feel like after that it would start to feel like a little bit drawn out for the story that they were
yeah.
trying to tell. So I would say like one more season is like really what I would be
The
happy
sweet
to
spot.
see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Hmm.
Agreed.
So yeah, well, I'm curious. We'll have to keep an eye on things to see. I would be super shocked if they did not get renewed for another season. Like it feels like one of those shows where
Mm.
Netflix is gonna let them end it
Keep
when they
going.
want to end it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hopefully, like they don't pull, I don't know, Supernatural and go on for like 15 seasons. I can't imagine them doing that, but you know, we'll see. That was the first. I was like, what show went on way longer than it needed to?
Supernatural.
Supernatural.
Mm.
But yeah, it would be nice for it to be like a young royals type thing where they're like, okay, we know this is the last
Yeah.
season, so we know we get to close out these storylines and this is how we want it to end. So that's what I'm hoping to see. Luna's ready to go. I
You
see
could
her little
hear
tube
that was
going.
her. Yeah, I was gonna say that was her zooming out of that tunnel.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Any final thoughts before we kind of jump into ratings for the season and wrap it up?
There's like so much more we could dive into that
It
we
really
just
could
don't
be
have
like a
time
full
Yeah.
to like.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many other little things that we haven't mentioned that we could go further into, like the whole conversation between Tara and Nick, and oh wait, I think it was also maybe it was with a couple other people in the car. I can't remember
The
about
university
Nick being
conversation.
yes, the university conversation and like
Mm.
Yeah.
being separate from Charlie. He's not like he's his own person. You don't have to worry that you leaving is going to cause Charlie to spiral, but also like you need to be thinking about you and your future, and you are your own person outside
Yeah,
of
you
your
need to
relationship with
exist as
Charlie
a
and
person.
how Charlie relies on you at times. And yeah,
The dependency. They did touch on that this
yes,
season, their codependency. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that's explored. Also, our
Michael, we
lesbian
haven't
queen
mentioned.
Imogen and
Okay, yep, Queen
Michael.
Imogen.
Okay.
There's a
Yes.
few people.
Oh my god, there's so
Queen
many people to talk about in this
Imogen.
show. I remember we did the season 2 review and I think it was Kayla and I were like that when Imogen was looking at Sahar on stage, like the vibes were
Mm-hmm.
there, and Pixie was like, I don't see that. It
Did
the
I
see
felt
like
those
it
Mm-mm.
vibes?
yeah,
How did you
it
not
was
see that,
so like
Pixie?
her journey this season, and
Oh my
just
god,
kind of
yeah.
realizing like that she's been living in this bubble of comp het, and
Compet.
like
Oh,
feeling like she
yeah.
has to date men because of the image she gives, like the type of girl that she lives as,
Yeah.
basically. And like she said, being a popular girl or a cool girl, and like
Mm-hmm.
just this journey of like realizing she's never actually liked a man. I was like, oh, someone send her the lesbian master doc, please.
Yep,
She
yes.
needs the lesbian master doc. But I think she was pretty much there by the end of the season. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see, if her and Sahar circle back and are actually a thing. I like
See,
that they were
I
kind of like,
I would prefer them just to be friends.
yeah, no,
I
I was gonna
like
say I
them
like
just
that
as
they were kind of
friends.
like, I don't want to hurt you because I'm still trying to
Yeah.
figure out who I am, and
Yeah.
like this bit of Sahari being like, Imogen's the reason I realized I was bisexual. Like that's
Yeah.
a very intense dynamic, and
Yeah.
obviously Sahara's feeling very almost used while
Yeah.
Imogen kind of figured herself out. So I like that they kind of ended them on this amicable term of like, we're friends,
Mm-hmm.
but it'll be interesting to see if like they circle back around to Imogen having any kind of love interest, or I feel like knowing Heartstopper, they might circle back
They'll
around
give
to
us
Sahar and
someone.
Imogen.
I
We'll
don't
see
want that
though.
though. I want
I
them to.
know. I was like, we'll
I
see,
love.
but
Mm.
Oh, I just. I love the. I would prefer if they stayed friends, really close friends, but
mm-hmm,
like having that experience of kind of figuring themselves out because of each other,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
creating that friendship, but then them finding like romantic love outside of that friendship, but always
Yeah.
coming back to like they are close friends and
Mm.
they're close friends for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would prefer that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
disagree, but I just feel like
It's yeah.
the show will probably circle back to them being the end
Who
game, especially with
knows?
them bringing Sahara into the cast more. But
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see. I'm curious to see where that'll
Yeah.
go. So, but Michael was a delight. I thought his character was
He
so
was
Loved
a
fucking
him.
cute.
delight.
I need more of him too.
Oh, yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I need more of Tori and Michael and like oh, he was just so
He was
cute.
such a little cutie. He made me laugh.
And I loved that. I, I loved the tiny little scene which was improv, like the little scene after this scene was improv when Michael gave Charlie the little cat
Oh,
thing
mm-hmm.
for his
Yeah.
birthday or something. And then like the little
Meow.
meows afterwards was
Oh,
like
meow.
improv, but
Yeah.
like the little scene of him giving that, oh, that was so cute. Stop.
He's so funny.
Oh, I am such a sucker for like a really stark dynamic in like a
Mm-hmm.
romantic
Mm-hmm.
relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and Tori and Michael give that in
It's like
spades
golden
and I
retriever, black
love it.
cat, sunshine
Yes.
protector type. They kind of fall into that
Yeah,
dynamic, I think.
love it.
So
Hmm.
I need more
Absolutely
Michael
love it.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Is there any other characters that we haven't mentioned?
I'm like, who else did we forget?
Mm.
Oh, Jonathan Bailey's random cameo
Oh,
in the show. It was so funny because
that was
I feel
actually
like they
pretty
hyped
funny.
him up a lot as being part of Heartstopper season
He
3,
was
and
there
then
for
like
like 10 minutes, then
they
gone.
showed some Instagram pictures of them, and then he had one scene, but I was like, you know what?
It was
It's Jonathan
impactful
Bailey,
though.
so I
It was
get why they
impactful
hyped it
on
up.
Nick.
Yeah.
Actually, I
Oh,
love that at the end. Actually, when they're both walking away, Nick's like, "Yeah, no,
he
he's
is
hot.
really
He's
hot.
really
Yeah.
hot." Yeah,
The bi panic. Yeah.
yes. Mood. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you said, we could probably sit here for another 30 minutes and try and tap through
yeah,
everything. I feel like we might need to do like a Young Royal style thing when the show does end, and just like
yeah.
deep dive into
Mhm.
all
All
of
the
Heartstopper as a
seasons.
whole.
Yeah,
Gotta dive into everything, but these reviews
yeah.
are only supposed to be like 30 minutes, and we're at 50 right now. So.
Well, if
It's a
that's something
treat.
that people want to listen to, let us know in the
Let us
comments.
know.
If you want,
Yeah.
like, once Heartstopper is 100% done, if you want a massive deep dive into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would be happy to do that, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, do you guys have your ratings for season 3 as a whole?
Yes.
Heather, you seem pretty ready to
Okay, I
go.
was like, I know. So I really loved it. But there were a couple of things that I was not too happy about, which we spoke about. So I think that overall it's a 4.5 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really high up there. I would watch it again. It's great. I would recommend it to people. I think it held its own with the other seasons, even though there were like jarring moments or all that sort of stuff. I think in terms of storyline quality, it did hold its own with the others. I just had a couple more issues with this season than I've had with previous. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
4.5.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I was also sitting at a 4.5. Excuse me. I just think, especially when it comes to seasonal shows, it's always really hard for, and especially when it's a show like Heartstopper, it's really hard for any season to be as good as the first. Like that impact that the first season of Heartstopper had, like I love this season a lot, but like I just think that kind of the first season of Heartstopper and just like the way that show just kind of right out the gate like took everyone by storm. I think it's just
Yeah.
such a unique thing. And like as seasons go on with the show, like not to say you lose the magic because I think this season did a really good job of keeping that heart of Heartstopper still, but it's just like it's never going to be perfect. It's no show's going to be perfect, but I think, just for that kind of nostalgia and love I feel for that very first season, I kind of sit at a 4.5 for season 3.
Yeah.
But I still loved it a lot. And I think they did a lot of good with character development this season that I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed seeing. And I think that was a big highlight of the season for me. So solid, very, very solid 4.5.
Yeah.
So I was also gonna say 4.5 because this was my favorite season yet.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason it's not a 5 is because there are so many characters, so we're not getting, like, what I feel like is adequate time with all of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, like, I would have loved to see more of Sahar. I feel like we
Mm-hmm.
don't really know
Yeah.
anything about her. Um, and maybe more with Isaac. I don't know what exactly, but yeah, there were characters that I was like, I would really like to them to go more in depth with them, and I guess they didn't have time because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, despite all that, yeah, this season was really good. I think this is the first season where I resonated a little bit with every single character.
Mm, yeah.
Like I resonated so much with Charlie and Tori. I resonated with
Mm-hmm.
Nick and Isaac, like literally everyone. I was like, I see a little bit of myself in everything that they're all going through. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like in previous seasons, it was more like I was looking at the characters in a sympathetic way, but this season it was very much like empathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I felt them on a deeper level. So that's why I'm
No,
doing 4.5.
I definitely agree. Okay. Well, that is all for our review of Heartstopper Season 3. Be sure to let us know what you thought about the third season down in the comments below or on our social media. Just a friendly reminder, all of our reviews, I guess minus this one because we kind of just really wanted to do it, but all of our reviews are voted on by our patrons, and they do get access to watch them a month before they go out to the general public. So if you're interested in choosing what series we review next, consider joining our Lovecaster Patreon family. It's also a great way to support the podcast if that's something you're interested in as well. But that'll be all for this special little bonus review of Heartstopper, and we will see you guys in another review soon. Bye bye.